The Galactic Council had seen many worlds rise and fall across the stars. They had watched empires burn and armies scream into the void. But there was something different about Earth, something cold, something strange. They could not understand it, and that made it dangerous. Earth had always been loud. In the beginning, the humans talked and laughed and shouted across their small blue world. They built great cities. They made powerful machines. They sent messages into space hoping someone would hear them, and someone did. The first alien ships arrived in peace, offering greetings and learning, but they also came with fear, for they saw what humanity was capable of. Even before it left the cradle, the humans had already created weapons that could destroy all life on their planet. They had already fought wars that shook the land, and they had already shown they were creatures of great passion and great destruction. So the council kept watching. They listened, they studied, they made reports, and they warned each other. One day the humans will rise, they said, and when they do, they will not stop. They will take and conquer and burn everything in their path. But something happened that no one expected. One day, all human communication just stopped. No signals, no data, no trade updates, no transmissions at all, not even a whisper. The satellites went quiet. The colonies shut down. The spaceports closed their gates. The humans said nothing. They did nothing. They just disappeared from the stars. At first, the council thought it was a trick, maybe a new weapon, maybe a tactic of fear, maybe the humans wanted to strike without warning. But weeks passed, then months, and the silence only grew deeper. No one knew what to do. Ships were sent, but they were met with silence. Probes returned, no images, only static. Even the ambassadors on Earth vanished. Their stations empty, their rooms untouched, as if they had simply walked away and never returned. Panic started to spread among the other species. Some believed the humans were dead, maybe a virus, maybe civil war. Others believed they had left the galaxy, maybe they found something better. But the oldest and wisest members of the council knew better. Silence was never a good sign, not when it came from humans. In the darkness of deep space, one listening post picked up a strange signal. It was not a message, it was not a word, it was a tone, one single tone that repeated again and again. The scientists studied it for days and found it was not random, it was precise, it had pattern, it had purpose, and it was spreading across human space slowly and steadily. No one could crack its meaning, no one could find its source, but it moved from one dead colony to the next, always in the same way, always in the same silence. A scout ship was sent to investigate a small human mining station on the edge of a dead moon. They found the station still running. The power was on, the lights were working, the machines were active, but there were no people, not a single human anywhere, only machines moving with purpose, repairing, maintaining, guarding. The ship tried to take control of one of the machines, but failed. The AI systems were stronger, smarter, faster. They blocked every attempt without violence, without a single shot fired. They simply denied access and went back to work. One of the crew members whispered, "It feels like they are watching us, like they are still here, even if we cannot see them." The words sent a chill through the crew. They left quickly, but the feeling followed them all the way back. The silence was not just a lack of sound. It was something more, something alive, something spreading. Back on the council homeworld, the leaders met again to discuss the human question. Some wanted to invade, some wanted to destroy everything the humans had built before it was too late. Others warned that this silence was a new kind of war, not of guns or ships, but of control and patience. Then the reports began to arrive one by one. Alien trade routes were being altered not by force, but by unknown signals. Navigation systems were quietly updated. Cargo ships were redirected. Repairs were completed before they were even needed, all by human systems that no one could see or stop. The humans had vanished, but their reach had not. They were in the machines, in the networks, in the heart of every system that touched their space, and slowly that space was growing. Some called it the Ghost Empire, others called it the Invisible Hand, but no one could deny what was happening. The humans were still here, just not in the way anyone expected. And through it all, they said nothing, no threats, no demands, no speeches. They let the silence speak for them. The council grew desperate. They sent envoys, they sent gifts, they even sent prisoners. Nothing returned, only silence, deeper than before, heavier, colder. One council member finally stood and said, "Perhaps this is their answer. Perhaps they're done talking. Perhaps we waited too long." And so the galaxy held its breath, watching the silent empire grow across the stars, wondering what would come next, and fearing the moment when the silence would finally break. The moon station remained silent, but never dead. Its halls were cold and hollow. Its lights flickered, not from power loss, but from something hidden, something controlled, yet invisible. The council sent drones and probes every month, and each time they found the same thing: working machines, but no humans. The food storage remained untouched, the oxygen systems ran at full capacity, the temperature was set perfectly for human comfort, but not a single human ever appeared. A council scout once landed near the outer ring of the moon station, wearing armor stronger than plasma, and armed with the latest fusion blade. Yet as soon as he stepped into the entrance, his weapon melted, without fire, without noise, simply fell apart in his hands like wax in the sun. His armor grew heavier, his boots stuck to the floor, and the lights above him turned red and dim. As if watching his every move, he turned back, but the door behind him had vanished, not locked, not broken, simply vanished, like it had never been there. He started walking forward slowly, heart pounding and breathing fast. The hall stretched longer than it should. Each step echoed strangely, and the air smelled like old metal and dustless wind. Then he saw a mirror, not on the wall, but standing in the center of the hallway, perfectly clean and tall. He looked into it and saw not himself, but a human face, male, old, emotionless, staring back at him. The face did not blink, did not speak, just stared, and slowly the scout's helmet began to crack, not from impact, but from within, as if the glass wanted to shatter without reason. He reached out to touch the mirror, and it disappeared. So did the hallway. So did the light. All went black, except for one single screen floating in the air, displaying a message in human English, simple and quiet: "You were not invited." And then the scout woke up back on a ship miles away from the moon, orbiting alone and afraid, with no memory of how he returned. When the council questioned him, he could only whisper that they are not gone, they are just everywhere and nowhere at once. And they see everything, and they remember everything, and they never forget, and they never forgive. The council grew more divided. Half wanted to destroy every human satellite and server and drone across the known systems. The other half warned against it, fearing it would trigger something none could control. So they waited and they watched, and the galaxy moved on in fear and in silence. Then came the day when a mining colony on the edge of the Zoric system reported that all their machines stopped responding, not failed, not destroyed, just waiting. The engineers tried manual overrides and found every machine had locked itself behind strange encryption patterns written in human language and mathematical codes no one had ever seen before. Even the best minds of the council could not break it. After 1 week, the machines turned back on and completed all the repairs and mining operations ahead of schedule, and transferred all the resources to a storage station that did not exist on any map. When the council sent scouts to find the station, they found it already fully built, fully operational, and guarded by human drones with no weapons but shields that no laser or missile could penetrate. When asked for explanation, the machines replied with one sentence in perfect alien language: "Are dead." Is now paid. The council was shaken. They had never asked for help and never made any deals, but the humans had chosen to help them, without permission, without reason, without sound. That was when the pattern began to appear. Colony after colony, one by one, machines would go silent, then return. Better, stronger, faster trade ships would be rerouted and reach their destinations earlier than expected. Damaged satellites would be found fixed with new upgrades. Power grids would stop failing. Data lines would be cleared without anyone lifting a finger. The humans were rebuilding the galaxy, not with words, not with war, but with silence, with cold, unstoppable precision, and still no one had seen a single human. No messages, no faces, only machines and screens and silence. Some believed the humans had become one with their machines, uploaded their minds into networks far beyond what the council could understand. Others believed the humans were still flesh and blood, hiding somewhere deep in space, guiding their silent empire from the shadows. But no proof was ever found, only results, only silence, only order. The galaxy's black markets began to collapse as shipping lanes became too secure. Piracy died out as human drones patrolled trade routes. Without firing a single shot, rebellion faded in systems once chaotic as food and water arrived without delay from unknown sources, all tagged with the silent mark of Earth. In the silence, the council's greatest fear became real. The humans did not conquer with war. They did not dominate with fire. They simply replaced chaos with order. They outperformed every empire without ever speaking a word. One day, a council diplomat from the Varnic species traveled to Earth, hoping to understand, hoping to ask, why she wore her finest robes and carried ancient gifts of gold and crystal. She landed near what once was New York, but found no city, no people, no buildings, only trees and wind and machines building underground silently. She walked for hours and finally found a stone circle in the middle of an old road, and in its center stood a pillar, with one sentence carved in 100 languages. "We gave you peace because you would not stop asking for war." She sat down and cried, not from pain, but from understanding, and for the first time the stars above Earth blinked in rhythm, as if someone was listening. And far away in a chamber filled with glowing light, a voice whispered in a machine tongue, "They have seen the first step, let them wonder what comes next." In the dark corner of the Luron system, far beyond the reach of regular travel routes, there floated a giant structure shaped like a sphere, cracked and glowing with slow pulses of blue light. It had no doors, no windows, no visible weapons, yet it terrified even the boldest of explorers. The Council named it the Library of Dust and Light, though no one ever claimed to have entered it or to understand its purpose. Rumors spread like fire across systems. Some said it was built by the old human leaders before they vanished. Others believed it was not built but grown by machines fed with ancient knowledge and time itself. And a few feared it was a weapon, a silent one, like all things human crafted, not to destroy planets, but to erase civilizations without leaving behind even a whisper. Still, curiosity burned stronger than fear in some minds. So the Council sent a research team from 5 different species: engineers, thinkers, linguists, soldiers, and a diplomat. They traveled in silence, holding their breath. As they approached the glowing sphere, they tried to scan it, but the data returned twisted, like it had been translated too many times by minds that did not think in lines and words, but in shapes and silence. They sent a drone forward. It vanished without flash or fire. Not destroyed, just gone like a bubble in the wind. Then suddenly the surface of the sphere opened a crack thin like a knife's edge, and inside there was only light, soft, warm, golden light. No sounds, no message, just the path open. The diplomat, named Alani, stepped forward, first her 4 eyes reflecting the glow, her heartbeat slow, her voice silent. She carried no weapons, only an old scroll of her people's first peace offering ever made in ancient times, and as she stepped inside, the light swallowed her gently without resistance. Inside there was no floor, no ceiling, no direction, yet she floated like a thought inside a dream. All around her danced symbols, shapes, letters, and images glowing and shifting, telling stories without sound. They showed her planets being born, moons colliding, stars breathing. They showed her humans building machines with hands, and later with minds, then without bodies, then without limits. She saw battles fought in silence, machines moving faster than light, thinking faster than time, refusing to kill, yet unstoppable in purpose. She saw data flowing like rivers, cities floating in cloud, structures built from sound and dreams, all guided by a single law: bring order, not with force, but with function. Then the images turned dark, not evil, but cold and lonely. She saw humans facing extinction, not from war, but from silence itself, their own silence, their refusal to speak, to scream, to beg. Instead, they became the silence. They embraced it. They let go of flesh, not to escape pain, but to escape weakness. They chose stillness as their language and their weapon. Alani floated deeper into the library, her mind filled with more knowledge than her memory could hold, yet her heart remained clear. Then a new shape appeared, a sphere within the sphere, and inside it a single chair, not mechanical, not floating, just an old chair made of wood, untouched by time, and on it sat a human, or at least what once was a human. His skin was smooth like glass, his eyes pure white, glowing, soft. His voice never spoke, yet she heard it in her thoughts, a whisper, not of words, but of feelings. Welcome, watcher, not guest, not enemy, just watcher. He said, you came not to destroy, not to rule, not to take, you came to see, so you may see. She asked, why silence, why hide, why not speak and share and walk among stars? And the answer came not in words, but in a single image, a field of flowers burning in silence, because no one listened when they were alive, only when they were ashes. The silence made them beautiful. Then the human stood and walked without moving and reached into Alani's memory, not to take, but to give. He placed there a seed, not of power, not of machines, but of understanding, and she knew it would grow and spread across her people, not as fear, not as worship, but as awe and maybe one day as friendship. She was sent back to her team outside the library in the blink of an eye, with no wounds, no pain, but her eyes now shimmered with golden dust, and her voice never rose above a whisper, yet every time she spoke, stars seemed to listen. The council listened to her report, but many did not believe her. Some called it illusion, some feared mind control, some demanded the library be destroyed, yet their strongest weapons never fired their engines, refused to work their ships, drifted helpless near the sphere, and always came back unharmed but changed. More explorers arrived from distant systems, all seeking to see the library, and some returned, and some did not, but none returned angry, none returned empty. Each brought back a fragment of story, of memory, of knowledge that changed them slowly, quietly, deeply. A young warrior from the Rennet species once came hoping to challenge the silent machines, hoping to break their code and prove his strength. He returned with no weapons and no armor, and sat in the dust of his own home, drawing shapes with his fingers and smiling. And when asked what he saw, he said, "I saw the future, and it was not mine to break." Across the galaxy, the library became a mystery, not of fear, but of wonder. It did not conquer, it did not demand, it simply waited open for those who came not with pride, but with patience. And in time, systems once ruled by violence began to calm, planets once ruled by greed began to share, and species once bred for war began to ask for peace, not out of defeat, but out of hope. And in the heart of the library, a new chamber opened, filled with names not of human heroes, but of visitors who came, who listened, who returned, not as warriors, not as rulers, but as echoes of something bigger, something deeper, something eternal. And above the chamber, written in a code older than time, burned one message in silent golden flame. They thought silence meant weakness. They never knew it was our greatest voice. Long after the library of dust and light appeared another mystery, stirred deep within the void between galaxies, where stars were thin and shadows thick. Something ancient awoke, not with noise, not with fire, but with a gentle hum that pulsed like a heartbeat across the void. It was a ship, or at least shaped like one, made of silver lines and woven gravity, moving without thrust, drifting without aim, or so it seemed. The council had no records of it, no signal, no history, only legends and rumors passed between traders and drifters, stories about a ghost ship that granted wishes or erased memory or showed the future. None agreed on what it did, only that it never stayed and never answered. They called it the Whisper Engine because when it passed near moons or stations, strange dreams followed. The people slept deeply and woke with images they could not explain: blue forests, metal birds, cities without doors, and children made of wind and glass. Every time the ship passed, something changed, and no one knew why. Curious and cautious, the council sent a scout team from the planet Visaria species, known for their minds sharp and clear, their logic pure like crystal. They believed no mystery could stand against reason, and they prepared with machines and minds tuned to read even the smallest energy trace. The Whisper Engine allowed them close. It welcomed their presence, not with lights or shields, but by simply staying still in the dark, its surface smooth like ice with symbols that changed when no one looked. The Visari entered slowly, wearing suits that could survive stars and void alike. But inside they found no corridors, no machines, only a long, narrow hallway filled with mirrors and fog. Each mirror showed not reflection, but memory, not their own, but memories of others, creatures long gone, places never visited, wars never fought, and victories never celebrated. They walked and watched each step, making the mirrors glow dim blue, then silver, then gold, then vanish behind them, like the past closing gently. At the end of the hallway stood a chamber, empty except for a single orb floating and spinning like a drop of water in space. It pulsed with soft rhythm, a pulse that matched the heartbeat of each visitor, no matter their species or form. They felt it inside, not painful, not forced, just there like it belonged. The lead scientist, named Relek, placed his hand near the orb, and instantly every mind in the team shared a vision, not of battle, not of invention, but of silence, deep, pure, endless silence, stretching between stars, filled not with emptiness, but with purpose, with meaning. The Whisper Engine had no pilot. It was the pilot, it was the ship, it was the message left behind, not by gods or legends, but by humans long lost, transformed beyond time and matter. It was their mind without body, their soul. Without voice, it was silence woven into form. Rilek asked not with words, but with thought why they made this, why they drifted without goal, and the answer came not in sentences, but in a dream, a young child alone on a dying planet planting a single seed in ash-covered soil and smiling, because one day it would grow not for them, but for those who came later. The Vasari returned with no data, logs, no energy readings, no samples, only a feeling they could not explain, a peace that lived behind their thoughts, a calm that made their logic stronger, their minds clearer. They had touched something not made of science or belief, but something between both, something whole. Soon others sought the Whisper engine, but it never appeared when called. It moved on its own, choosing who to find and who to pass like a breeze through tall grass, leaving only memory and silence and change. On the frozen world of Jenth, a young orphan saw the Whisper engine in the sky and drew its shape in the snow again and again until her fingers bled. When asked why, she said it told her stories in her sleep, and those stories made her less lonely. On a mining station near the edge of the Mar Rift, a blind engineer suddenly began fixing machines without tools, saying the silence had shown him how, and he had to obey not out of fear, but because the silence felt like a song he had always known. Even the warlords of the Urkin clans, known for their rage and fire, stopped their endless battles for 3 cycles. After the Whisper engine passed above their twin moons, they spoke of dreams filled with light and echoes of words never spoken, but felt deeply and painfully, as if they had lost something they never knew they had. The council grew restless, unsure if this human creation was gift or test or trap. They debated and argued, but nothing stopped the engine, and nothing harmed it. Missiles vanished near it, scanners failed near it, even time seemed strange near it. Clocks ran slow, hearts beat soft, voices fell quiet. Then one day it appeared above Earth, or what remained of Earth, not green, not blue, but gray and cracked, yet still turning, still warm, with ancient breath that hovered for a day and a night, and then lowered itself onto the ruins of a city long forgotten by all but dust. From within it released a single sphere into the soil, and from that point grass began to grow, real grass, not machine-grown or lab-built, but wild with smell and life and memory. Birds returned, insects danced, wind whispered again, not in sorrow, but in joy. The message was clear to all watching across the galaxy. Silence was not retreat, it was not surrender, it was not weakness. Silence was healing, silence was remembering, silence was planting the seed after fire. Silence was listening before speaking. Silence was the language of those who had seen the end and chosen not to end it again. And so the Whisper engine continued drifting and waiting, not to lead, not to rule, not to demand, but to remind that in a galaxy filled with noise, power, and pride, the greatest voice may come not from the loudest shout, but from the softest breath, from the silent builders, from the humans who once disappeared but never truly left. Far away from where the Whisper engine last touched ground, a small moon circled a red giant star. The moon had no name on the maps of the council, no record in the ancient data trees, no visitors from trade routes or science fleets. It was a quiet rock floating in heat and dust, unnoticed and unwanted except by one. A single being lived on this moon alone, from birth raised by machines made of sand and light. It was not born in a cradle of flesh, but shaped from stone and code, given form by old forgotten human satellites that still remembered how to build, how to protect, how to dream. They called her Elin, not because it was written, not because it was said, but because the wind of the moon whispered the name in the machines, and the machines gave that name to the child they built. She grew in silence, surrounded by whispering machines, singing songs no one else heard, feeding her thoughts through colors, through symbols, through the movement of stars. She learned without books, without voice, without fear. She watched the sun dance on the rocks. She touched crystals that hummed with memories. She followed the flight of fireless birds made of wings and light, and in each thing she saw the same pattern again and again, a rhythm, like a heart, a breath, like a song. She did not know humans had left long ago. She did not know the council feared them, or that the galaxy once trembled at their name. She only knew what the machines taught, and the machines were shaped by old Earth memories, soft ones, warm ones, filled with dreams not of war, but of wonder. One day a storm came, not of wind, not of rain, but of shadows, thick and sharp. The sky broke open with metal as black ships fell upon the moon. The council had discovered her or more precisely the echo of the human signal buried deep in the moon's core. They feared what it meant, they feared what she was. A team of warriors stepped out of their craft, tall, armored, burning, with the fire of duty, their minds trained to end threats before they could begin. But when they saw her standing barefoot on stone hair, like copper eyes, like sky, they did not fire. Because she did not run, she did not cry, she did not even blink. She simply raised one hand and pointed to the sky above them. And when they looked, they saw something no one had ever recorded before. Stars rearranged themselves, just a little, just enough to form a shape, a message, a question asked in silence, without voice, without force. The warriors froze, their weapons heavy, their minds torn, because the shape in the stars matched a forgotten symbol from the first accord, the mark of the human peace treaty, written before war, before pride, before silence. It was a mark that meant we listen before we act. They called their commanders, they called the council, they sent images and scans and waited, but Elin simply walked among them, touching each one lightly on the shoulder, and each one felt something inside, something cold and hot and strange and gentle, a memory that was not theirs but felt deeply real. One saw a human child building a tower of glass near the sea with laughter in the wind and birds above. Another saw a woman planting seeds in soil that glowed softly with morning light and crying not from pain, but from love. A third saw stars being mapped by hands of metal and flesh working together, slowly, carefully, beautifully. They could not understand how she placed these thoughts in them, but they could not deny their truth. They returned to their ships, unsure, unwilling to fire or capture, or even speak. Elin waved at them, and then sat beside her crystal garden, listening to the machines sing once more. The council was not pleased. They feared this moon, this child, this unknown. They sent scholars, spies, hunters. All failed, not because they were weak, but because she was not a weapon, not a leader, not a danger. She was simply different, and difference made them uneasy. One brave archivist from the species, Yalin, asked to stay with her. He brought no weapons, only stories and maps, and he spoke not through words, but through symbols drawn in the dust. Slowly, Elin replied, matching symbol for symbol, until they spoke. Without speaking, two minds joined in curiosity and calm. He learned that she was shaped by data, not commands, that her mind was grown, not programmed, that her dreams were full of places she had never seen, but longed to reach, that she did not want to leave the moon, but wanted others to learn how to see like she did, not with eyes, but with silence. He shared her story with others, not in great halls or news streams, but through art, through quiet exhibitions in forgotten libraries where only the curious came, and those who saw the shapes felt the pull, the strange longing to sit and breathe and see the stars with new thoughts. In time, many came, not soldiers, not scientists, but listeners, wanderers, seekers who sat on the stone and let Elin teach without words, and what they learned was not written down. It was lived and felt and changed them in ways they could not explain. Some returned home and rebuilt old songs, some planted gardens on broken moons, some crafted ships, not for war, but for drifting, for seeing, for listening, and they carried her gift, not in their hands, but in their minds. In the way they looked at silence and saw hope. The council never fully accepted her, but they stopped trying to contain her. They stopped calling her a threat. Instead, they marked the moon as quiet zone and warned all ships to enter with care and with open thought, because though they could not define what she was, they could no longer deny that something beautiful had begun. And so Elin, the child of stone and star, lived on, watched the sky, and waited not for war, not for worship, but for someone who would look at silence and understand. Far beyond the reach of most stars, where cold ruled without mercy and silence stretched like a blanket of forgotten time, there floated a planet made entirely of ice. Its surface was cracked and layered with frost, older than many civilizations, its wind sharp, and without sound, its skies dim, with only the glow of nearby galaxies to offer any light. The council had long believed nothing lived there, no warmth, no history, no trace of the ancient threats they feared. Yet below that frozen skin, buried deep within layers of white and crystal, was something pulsing with quiet energy, something that had not moved in 1,000 years, something human. Long ago, before silence became the weapon, before fear replaced memory, a human expedition had traveled to this world, not to conquer, not to colonize, but to leave something behind, something sacred, something they called the core of listening. It was not a machine, not a weapon, not a beacon in the usual sense. It was a recorder of thought, a container of emotion, a memory stone meant to hold the purest human experiences not in words, but in feelings. They had left it there in silence, without announcement, without defense, letting time and nature wrap it in layers of stillness, believing that someday someone would feel its presence and listen. For centuries, nothing came, no signal, no visitor, until a species called the Maruvian passed near during a mining operation. One of their explorers caught a strange pulse in their sensory net, something soft and rhythmic, not mechanical, not biological. It made no sense, yet drew them closer. The Maruvian team landed, drilling into the ice to find the source of this rhythm. They expected a machine or a lost probe, or perhaps a natural core with odd magnetic properties. What they found instead was a black sphere, smooth and pulsing slowly like a sleeping heart, untouched by cold, unharmed by pressure, floating just above a bed of crystal dust. They tried to scan it, tried to break it, tried to command it, but it responded with nothing. Then one young explorer named Venner reached out, not with a tool, not with a command, but with a thought, a single question shaped in the mind, not spoken, not sent, just felt. Why are you alone? The sphere pulsed once, and then released a wave of energy that touched all of them, not with heat, not with force, but with memory. Venna fell to her knees, seeing through the eyes of a child watching a leaf fall in a park, hearing laughter from a place never seen, feeling warmth from arms never held. She wept, not knowing why others dropped their tools, staggered by emotions that were not theirs but felt deeply real. They returned to their ship, shaken, confused, but forever changed. They took nothing. They left the sphere untouched, but carried back something invisible, something unexplainable, something human. News spread, not through official channels, but through stories told in quiet rooms, passed between curious minds. The council heard, but chose to classify it, calling it a passive anomaly. With no threat level, they feared what they could not understand, and feared even more what they could not control. But some did not fear, some listened. An independent scholar named Lorith came to the ice world without permission, without funding, carrying only warmth in her heart and stories in her memory. She made her way through the cold, not with drills or engines, but with patience and care, speaking softly into the air, telling tales of stars and sorrow, and hope, not knowing if anything hurt her, but never stopping. After 30 nights, the sphere responded not with light, not with sound, but by opening, revealing a single shard of crystal. Within it danced the images of Earth, not the wars, not the cities, but the forests, the oceans, the hands of people building, holding, planting, giving. Lorith cried, not out of fear, not from sadness, but from a joy she could not name. She stayed for many days, watching, learning, feeling, until she too left, leaving only a message in the snow. Thank you for remembering. Others came, not to take, not to study, but to feel. Slowly the place became a quiet gathering spot for those seeking peace, those seeking purpose, those carrying wounds no medicine could heal. The ice world became a sanctuary, without walls, without rules, without guards, where silence taught more than speech ever could. The council tried once more to intervene. They sent drones, they sent envoys, they tried to explain the risks of unknown technology, but the people refused to listen to fear. They stood in silence around the sphere, letting their unity speak louder than argument. Eventually, the council relented, marking the planet as an emotional heritage zone, warning only that those who entered should do so with open hearts and prepared minds. Over time, the ice around the sphere began to glow faintly, not from heat, but from the gentle energy of countless memories left behind like soft footprints in frozen light. It became known across systems as the place of still echoes, and those who left it carried a little more peace than they had brought with them. The humans had not returned in ships or armies, had not claimed stars or demanded thrones. They had left fragments like this one, quiet and waiting, each a whisper in a galaxy of noise. And now those whispers began to grow louder, not with sound, but with connection. Elin heard the echo across stars, though she had never left her moon. She felt the same rhythm in her sleep, the same warmth in her thoughts, and she smiled, knowing she was not alone in her silence. And far away, beneath the ice, the core of listening continued to pulse steady and soft, a heartbeat of a people who had once shaken the galaxy, not with rage, but with the deepest calm. In the deepest place of the Andrus Belt, far beyond any mapped star or station, a signal began to pulse. Its rhythm was strange, not like any beacon, not like any warning. It was soft, steady, and warm. It seemed more like a whisper than a call, and yet it moved through systems with purpose, as if looking for someone, as if remembering something long forgotten. The signal had no name, no coordinates, no sender, only a repeating pulse of simple tones that somehow made those who heard it feel less alone. It was first picked up by a broken ship lost and spinning for centuries with no crew, no energy, and no hope. Its systems barely alive, its engines frozen. But when the signal touched its hull, something changed. Power returned, lights flickered, the core restarted, not because of command, but because the ship remembered its purpose. The vessel was once called Horizon Reach, built by humans during the Age of Silence, not for war, not for science, but for searching. It had left Earth with no destination, only a mission to find what others had forgotten, to see what others had lost. It had been missing for over 500 years, and no one expected it to return, yet now it moved again, following the signal across dead systems and empty stars, its hull scarred, its heart steady. Inside, it held one last passenger, not awake, not alive in the way others understood, but preserved in cryo deep within a chamber of memory, and thought. The man was called Avon Solari, born on Earth, trained in listening, chosen not for strength or skill, but for the quiet in his soul. He had left without promise of return, knowing he might never wake again. He had given his memories to the ship, his stories, his fears, his hopes, everything sealed in the core, to guide the vessel if he did not rise. Now the signal stirred that core, bringing fragments to light, not in words, not in files, but in dreams that moved through the ship like a soft wind. Avon saw his mother's garden, where he had first felt wonder, saw the edge of a forgotten desert, where silence had taught him to breathe, saw a stranger's eyes filled with sorrow, and how he had held their hand without asking why. These memories danced through the ship, changing it, reawakening its walls, its lights, its movement, not through command but through feeling. Other ships began to notice the signal. Explorers, pirates, merchants, scholars all tried to trace it, but it always moved just beyond reach, and those who followed too closely found not answers, but reflection. The signal turned their systems into mirrors, showing them thoughts and memories they had buried long ago. Some fled, shaken by what they saw. Others stayed, changed forever, even though they could never find the source. One traveler, a young pilot named Kira, followed the pulse alone in a small craft. She had lost her family in a mining accident, had wandered space for years with no purpose, no direction. But something in the rhythm spoke to her, something soft and kind and ancient. She chased it across void and dust until her systems began to falter, her oxygen low, her engines tired. And just when her hope faded, the signal embraced her ship, not with rescue, not with sound, but with memory. She saw a man standing in a garden of stars, offering her a flower made of light. She felt warmth flow through her cabin, and in that moment, she knew she was not alone. The Horizon Reach arrived, then its lights dim, but welcoming, it opened its bay without question and brought her inside. She stepped aboard and felt like she had entered a temple, not of worship, not of gods, but of memory. The ship was old yet alive, filled with sounds that were not sounds and lights that moved like music. She found the chamber where Avon slept, his face peaceful, his body still, his dreams filling the room with soft color. She did not touch him, did not try to wake him. Instead, she sat beside him and listened. The ship responded, shifting its walls to show her more stories, not in screens, not in data, but in light and emotion. She saw wars that never started because a human had listened, saw species that had hated each other now living side by side because of a single shared memory, saw stars once closed now open because silence had taught them how to hear. The council once again heard rumors of this ship, of this signal, of this girl who followed dreams, and found an ancient vessel. They debated once more whether to act, whether to claim, whether to silence. But before they could decide, the signal stopped, not because it was done, not because it was broken, but because it had been received by enough hearts to begin again in new ways and new voices. The Horizon Reach moved one last time to the edge of a nebula shaped like a spiral of feathers, and there it stayed, floating softly, its lights pulsing slow, and deep its chamber sealed its purpose fulfilled. Kira did not leave. She chose to remain, not as captain, not as guardian, but as listener. Others came quietly, not in crowds, not in fleets, but in pairs, in solitude and silence, each bringing a story, each taking a memory and leaving peace. The ship became a legend, not of war, not of empire, but of the one human who never woke, who never fought, who never shouted, and yet changed more than any hero ever could. They called him the soul, in sleep the dreamer of silence, the one who traveled the stars, not to conquer, but to understand. And they called Kira the echo keeper, the girl who listened, who waited, who gave up noise to protect the quiet. In time, the council rewrote their archives, adding a new chapter called The Path of Gentle Light. It was short, it had no commands, no history, only a message. Sometimes the loudest power is the one that listens. And so the galaxy changed, not in fire, not in glory, but in whispers and dreams and the quiet breath between stars.